This is Derrick Broze. This is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance. I'm here in Standing Rock.
That man is wanted in 5 different countries: Chile, Argentina, Brazil.
We've been fighting a long time. We've all lost so very much. So many loved ones gone.
Don't you fucking tease that horse!
You are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. Above all, stay alive. You have no idea how important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and today is the 176th episode of the Conscious Resistance Live, my regular podcast where I break down the news from a perspective that is beyond left and right and objective as humanly possible, perspective that is unbiased as humanly possible, and as I said, breaking through the propaganda from left and right. And this is also my first show of 2026. As we ended 2025, I asked all of you in my audience what I should do for 2026, what type of content I should focus on, whether I should do this show anymore, or if I should exclusively focus on the Activation podcast, which is my podcast where I interview different guests focused on different types of solutions, and whether I should just only do documentaries. And all of you said, do all of it and do the solutions talk about exit and build, Conscious Agora. And I am going to do all of the above. But I have been very busy because I've been preparing for the People's Reset, which is the annual gathering that I plan here in Mexico that starts this Wednesday. So as you're listening to this, there's still time to go ahead and get involved. If you want to learn more about that, we'll talk about it in just a second. But again, this is my first show of 2026. So a lot of the stories we're about to cover, which I'll give you a heads up, we're going to talk, of course, about ICE and everything going on with ICE, but we're going to talk about this unveiling of the Gaza Board of Peace. We're going to talk about a new poll showing that young Americans might be waking up. We're going to talk about how the Supreme Court blocked Trump from deploying the National Guard recently. And then, as I said, get into ICE and all of the nonsense, all the chaos going around that, and how it's part of an ongoing psyop to divide you, Americans, and people around the world to support and fight for your own enslavement as Trump builds the technocratic police state. And if you think I'm lying about that, or you don't believe me and you go, oh God, this guy's some crazy lefty, just stay tuned because you will see where I'm going with this. So stay tuned for that. But first off, like I said, the People's Reset is coming up this week, starting Wednesday, January 28th through Sunday, February 1st. But before we get to the People's Reset, what was last week? Think about what happened last week. Oh, the big event everybody wants to talk about, the World Economic Forum, the WEF. That just took place in Davos, Switzerland. And here's the post I made about it for those who are watching on screen. So tomorrow, January 19th, 2026, begins the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. The annual meeting of technocrats, globalists, Zionists, and crony capitalists is sure to grab the attention of the alternative media and the freedom movements around the world. And I mentioned a few of the talks that I was looking forward to discerning, not actually looking forward to. That included Palantir's Alex Karp talking with BlackRock's Larry Fink, by the way, both friends with Trump. Palantir under Alex Karp and Peter Thiel getting immense contracts under the Trump administration. Peter Thiel and Alex Karp, both steering committee members of the Bilderberg Group as well. Eric Schmidt, formerly of Google, was talking about the future of war. Of course, Trump gave a speech, which was just rambling and kind of all sorts of nonsensical. And then there was a talk about food on the edge, which was about the food supply with AI. But as I write here, however, I will be giving the World Economic Forum only a little bit of my precious attention because I'll be preparing for the more important 5-day conference the following week. And I'm speaking about the People's Reset, a 5-day activation taking place live in Morelia, Mexico, modeled after the World Economic Forum in the sense that we're a 5-day meeting, but we focus on bottom-up, grassroots, people-powered solutions rather than technocratic ones. And there still is time, if you're hearing this, my friends, to come in person if you want to learn from technologists, permaculturists, activists, journalists, healers, homesteaders, solutionaries, and freethinkers. You can still get tickets and come to the People's Reset live in Mexico in case you've got the means to do that. But if you can't make it in person, you can tune in for free on our website, thepeoplesreset.org, starting on Wednesday at 10 a.m., going every day from Wednesday through Sunday from 10 a.m., and then we go to 12:30. So there's about a 2-hour session there where we have several different speakers. That'll be streamed for free on our website. And then we take a lunch break for an hour and a half. We come back at 2 p.m. Central and we go till 5 p.m. So that's 2.5 hour, 3-hour sessions each day, starting Wednesday, 10 a.m., break in the middle, going from 2 to 5. And that's happening Wednesday through Sunday. You can watch all of that for free at thepeoplesreset.org. Go ahead and check out the website. You can look up the speakers. You can look up the main stage schedule. You can learn all about this. Like, my friends, before we get into all this crazy shit, if you are actually looking for solutions, if you're watching the world burn in front of you, if you're watching people abandon principle and show that they don't care about the future of humanity, they don't care about the coming 7 generations, they're just ready to be in their tribalism, their team politics. If you're sick of that and you're looking for real solutions, the People's Reset is the movement you've been looking for. I promise you, if you can come in person, your life will be changed. If you watch online, your life will probably be changed. You're going to get inspired. You're going to get motivated. You're going to get activated, because that's what this movement is about. Trying to get the so-called freedom and truth movements to move beyond just being reactionary and only focused on the problems, to actually focus on what we can do in our own lives. So that's my pitch for it, guys. Thepeoplesreset.org, January 28th to February 1st. You've got a couple of days. Tune in every day from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And obviously, I know a lot of you are working during that time. If you can't watch during the actual live stream, you can go down here. I think it's at the bottom. Scroll down and you can find the Odyssey channel. We have a Telegram channel. We have a Spanish Telegram channel. We have an Odyssey channel and a Spanish Odyssey channel. The entire thing will be streamed for free on the Odyssey channel, and the archives will be there. So you don't have to pay a single thing, and you can get solutions in the areas of permaculture, health, empowering decentralized privacy-based technology, building parallel systems, people talking about homeschooling, unschooling, people talking about alternative forms of organizing your communities and your families and your activist groups. All of this for free at thepeoplesreset.org. So I hope you guys will do yourself a favor and check it out. Let's jump into our first story. As I said, this past week was the World Economic Forum. And as part of the World Economic Forum, wouldn't you know it, Trump, besides giving a speech, his son-in-law, husband of his daughter, Jared Kushner, unveils the so-called free market Gaza with coastal towers and data centers. This is coming from MiddleEastEye.net. The U.S. envoy announces a $25 billion plan, which applies the same mindset to Palestinians' enclave economy as Trump's approach in America. And so they have this visual, as you can see here, the new Gaza with these like 3D, these like, renderings of some crazy futuristic buildings and ports. There's going to be a transportation hub. It'll be energy and digital infrastructure. Jared Kushner has unveiled a plan to turn Gaza into a region modeled on so-called free market principles akin to the U.S., complete with tall buildings along the coast and business districts. Oh, do you think there's going to be room for the Palestinians there? Of course not, because as I've been telling you guys for a while now, this technocratic board of peace and this whole thing that Trump's doing is all about putting puppets in there to further control the Palestinians and to use them as a model that they're going to try to export all over the world, as we're seeing now with the IDF and the ICE connection. Jared Kushner outlined the plans on Thursday at the World Economic Forum during the signing of the charter for Trump's Board of Peace. The plan estimated that $25 billion would be needed to develop the Palestinians' enclaves, utilities, and public services. They called for a 6-phase development timeline. Phase 1 in Rafah and parts of Khan Yunis. Phase 2 includes other parts of Khan Yunis. Phase 3 aims to develop refugee camps in central Gaza, while Phase 4 is focused on reconstruction in Gaza City. So they're basically going to put the Palestinians into even tighter little camps, the ones who are still alive and still existing and barely surviving and trying to thrive. They're going to stuff them into little camps wherever they can, and then they're going to build that freaking beachside property that Trump and his family have been talking about. And if you followed me on Twitter and elsewhere, you may have seen last year I shared a video that Trump posted on Truth Social. It was an AI-generated video of him and Bibi Netanyahu, and Elon Musk, I believe, was in it too, sitting down, on the beach and sipping margaritas or whatever on the, the developed beaches of Gaza. This is their plan, guys. I mean, this is what they want to do for, as I said, for all of humanity, but Gaza is the testing grounds for it. So what we're witnessing here, I mean, it's the plan for the future. They even call it a technocratic board, like the Technocratic Board of Peace. The proposal includes building a new airport, port, freight line, logistics corridor, a new trilateral crossing at Rafah, and new roads connecting Gaza's urban centers. They're going to move all kinds of Jewish people in here. They're going to, like I said, push the Palestinians further into camps. It is disgusting. It is disgusting. Here's New Rafah, 100,000 permanent housing units, 200 education centers, cultural, religious, and vocational centers, medical facilities. Who do you think is going to be the ones housing there? It's going to be the Jewish colonizers, the Israelis, and they're going to go ahead and and call in anybody that they can, but they won't be calling for Palestinians to live there. And of course, there is some about this quote from Susan Al-Waha, Palestinian American writer, who said that the plan is to erase Gaza's indigenous character, turn what remains of her people into a cheap labor force to manage their industrial zones, and to create an exclusive coastline for tourism. And she says, quote, indigenous traditions and social fabric of this land will be utterly obliterated. And so you can see here she is posting the same pictures we see of the New Gaza, Rafah master plan, all this whole thing. That's what this is about, guys. And they are going to wipe out any traces of Palestine. They say they're going to demilitarize and disarm Hamas, but really it is going to be about bringing in their own people. This is just more colonizing, more conquering of Gaza. And it's disgusting to see, my friends. But I mean, at this point, what else do we expect from the Trump administration? And I do want to point out, again, because I'm going to come back to this point a few different times, that this is just one example of how Trump is connected to the so-called globalists. There's this whole meme going around that the globalists have been defeated, and Trump's speech and some of his recent actions have shown that globalism is dead. And in fact, I posted this on Facebook. I find it hilarious that one of the narratives being spun this week by MAGA media is that Trump has dealt a death blow to globalism. To believe this, you must ignore that his cabinet has members and attendees of the Bilderberg Group, the World Economic Forum, the Young Global Leaders, Zionists, and Technocrats. You have to ignore that his admin is working with Palantir and that the two founders of the company, Alex Karp and Peter Thiel, are steering committee members of the Bilderberg Group. Globalism may have a new face, but it's not dead. The technocrats are simply stepping up to steer the ship with Trump as their puppet. And thankfully, as you can see, I got more than 1,000 interactions on this. It seems like a lot of people agree with me and can kind of see where this is all headed. And, one of the examples I've seen people talking about, they, say, well, Trump went to World Economic Forum and he made this big speech. Yeah, but he also unveiled his board of peace and technocratic plans for Gaza with Jared Kushner, as I just said. But the other big point is people were saying, well, Trump also announced that he's going to fully pull out of the World Health Organization. This is something he talked about in his first admin back in 2020. So I posted this. As people celebrate the U.S. leaving the WHO, do not forget that in 2020, under Trump's first administration, this happened. And this is from an article I wrote in 2020 titled Vaccine Bait and Switch. As millions pulled from the WHO, Trump gives billions to Gates-founded Gavi. Quote, taken together, the May payment, this is all payments that Trump did during the first administration while they claimed they were getting out of the WHO. The May payment of $775 million, the early June announcement of $1.16 billion, and the late June gift of $545 million. These taxpayer-funded investments will provide abundant resources for Gavi, and subsequently the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. These funds easily outweigh the paltry $281.6 million the U.S. was giving the WHO. So the point is, on one hand, he's like, we're leaving the WHO, we're sticking it to these people, and the Maha movement celebrates it. But on the other hand, in reality, Trump is redirecting funds towards Gavi and other Bill Gates connected organizations. And of course, now in Trump's second term, he's literally sitting and dining with Bill Gates. So this myth that Trump is kind of putting an axe to globalism and these institutions is just complete bullshit, my friends. All right, in our next story, we're looking at a new poll, which I think is some positive development, some positive signs. It says young Americans are increasingly rejecting the Democratic and Republican parties, a new poll shows. I mean, I think that's something we should all celebrate. Anytime the mainstream duopoly is being rejected or even questioned in any kind of way, it's a positive thing. And I think that the demographic here that they show lines up with what I've seen. It's lined up with my own life and just all the people I know in my family and younger people that don't buy into any of the bullshit. Now, in some ways, it's kind of negative because they feel very nihilistic or hopeless for the future. But I think if we can take that energy of people who reject the two-party system and the people who don't vote and turn it into people who use exit and build strategy and who understand the principles of voluntarism, then I think that could be a win for society. So the poll is from Gallup. It says, Americans are increasingly rejecting the two major political parties. Just under half, 45% of U.S. adults now identify as independents. This is a substantial shift from 20 years ago when closer to 1/3 of Americans said they didn't identify with Democrats or Republicans. So the number is nearly half of Americans. And they show the graphic here. They show how this has kind of changed over time and how you could go back to, was it 1990, and independents are 33%, and now it's like going up to 45%. And obviously what that means is that the support for Democrats and Republicans is cratering as well. So it's really only a quarter of the country each. One quarter supports Republicans, one quarter supports Democrats, and half the country is against both of them. This group appears to be increasingly driven by their unhappiness with the party in power. That's a dynamic that could be good for Democrats in this year's midterm elections, but it doesn't promise lasting loyalty. And this is sort of the one downside is they're taking this poll right now while people are pissed off about Trump and for different reasons. I know it's hard for a lot of the MAGA crowd to understand this, but middle America, average Americans, just sort of, normie Americans who don't really pay that much attention, who were disgusted by a lot of the things they saw from the left and from progressives during COVID 1984, and then joined this coalition for Trump. They're starting to be disgusted by a lot of things they're seeing from Trump. And so they're probably going to go back to the Democrats during this next stupid election later this year. And people will just keep going back and forth. I don't think that's a positive development. And I think if you had taken this poll during the Democrats, you would see a similar sign that people would be, I'm sick of both parties, but if I have to choose, I'm going to choose the Republicans. Because that's basically what this one shows, is that if you push the people who say, look, I don't identify with any party, according to this poll, they would choose, if push comes to shove, they would choose to be identified with the Democrats more than the Republicans. Independents have gravitated towards the Democrats over the past year when asked which party they lean to, Gallup found, but attitudes towards the party haven't gotten warmer. So it's basically just, all right, if you put a gun to my head, I'll choose the Democrats over Trump, but I don't really like either one. Young people in particular are rejecting the parties at much higher rates than older generations. More than half of Gen Z and millennials identify as political independents, while a majority of older generations still side with the party. God dang it, Gen X and boomers, why are you holding on to the political system? That's different from the past when more young adults identified with the Democrats or the Republicans, and part of the reason why frequent dramatic swings in political power may become increasingly normal, because people just, like I said, it's a positive sign. They're starting to question the system, but they still are yo-yoing and bouncing back and forth between the two parties. And ultimately, they're not abandoning the system, because so many people have been taught that, well, we got to do something, right? And voting's better than quote unquote doing nothing, when in reality, not voting, not participating in the system is one of the best things you could do instead of supporting these crooked, corrupt parties. Democrats regain the edge with political independents. Independents have long been the largest political group in the U.S., and their numbers have increased over the last 15 years, but often they're more inclined to side with one party over the other. This year, the Democratic Party has gained that partisanship edge. When independents were asked whether they lean more towards the Democrats or Republican Party, nearly half of them, U.S. adults, now identify as Democrats or lean towards Democratic Party, while 42% are Republicans or lean Republican. So it's still a pretty good split that these people who call themselves independent, push comes to shove, some go Republican, some go Democrat, but 5% more go towards the Democrats right now. So, I think that there's some positive things to see here, but overall, if you're still buying into the system, you're still falling trapped. So here, let's get a little more into the numbers. Younger Americans are driving the recent rise in U.S. adults identifying as independents. The Gallup polling found a majority of Gen Z and millennial adults who were born between 1981 and 2007. That would be my group and my younger brother, people like that, now identify as independents. Independent identity is softer in older generations, where only about 4 in 10 in Gen X currently call themselves independents, and roughly 3 in 10 older adults do. Young adults today are more likely than previous generations to identify outside of the two-party system, while 50% of Gen Z adults call themselves independents. That's higher than in 2012, when 47% of millennials said they were independents, and in 1992, when only 40% of Gen X identified that way. This means that this trend isn't likely to shift unless the parties are able to change the way younger people see them. And not only that, it says that independents are increasingly more moderate, so they're not hard left and they're not hard right. Some people just want common sense policy that doesn't go far off into left wing, gender surgeries for children, and others don't want it to go hard right with masked men kidnapping people off the streets and militarization of the streets and these kind of things. Some people just want things to work, and they don't want the government to be authoritarian, and they don't want propaganda pushed on their kids. So overall, I think this is a positive development. It's not that everybody's becoming anarchist or voluntarist or seeing through the system and waking up so much, but at least they're starting to question the fundamental systems of control that come from the two-party system. Now, if we could just get them to go a little further, and when push comes to shove, answer, I don't vote for either. No matter what you say, I won't vote for them. That would be a real win. All right, let's go ahead and continue on with our reports here today. Again, you're watching the 176th episode of the Conscious Resistance Live. My name is Derrick Broze. Thank you guys for being here. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe, please follow, like, share, all those good things. It does go a long way. This one is from a couple of weeks ago that I didn't get to cover before the end of the new year, and I just wanted to kind of highlight it for a moment before we get into our main story about ICE today, because I think it's important to highlight the times when, even though Trump is trying to do whatever the hell he wants and ignore the courts and things like that, there are some limited restrictions on him. And I don't really believe in the Supreme Court as an institution. I think it's a faulty institution. I think that, just because the Supreme Court says something is right doesn't mean it is right. But I think also they clearly sometimes can be an important check on power. This is one of those times. This is from late December, being reported by the New York Times, but you can find it anywhere. And this is, of course, even if you don't like the New York Times, this is a Supreme Court ruling, so you can go read the ruling yourself. Supreme Court refuses to allow Trump to deploy National Guard in Chicago. President Trump ordered state-based troops to Portland, Los Angeles, Washington, and Chicago over the objections of state and local officials. The Supreme Court on Tuesday, right before Christmas, refused to allow Trump to deploy hundreds of National Guard troops in the Chicago area over the objection of Illinois officials, casting doubt on the viability of similar developments in other cities, American cities. The justice's order is preliminary, but it blocks the Trump administration for now from ordering the state-based military force to the Chicago area, where an immigration crackdown led to thousands of arrests and confrontations between residents and federal agents. In this temporary ruling against the administration, the court refused to grant the president broad discretion to deploy military in the U.S. cities. It represented a rare departure from recent cases in which the conservative majority has overwhelmingly sided with Mr. Trump in preliminary tests of presidential power. And at this stage in litigation, the court said that Trump has not shown that the statute at issue, quote, permits the president to federalize the Guard and the exercise of inherent authority to protect federal personnel and property in Illinois. Three conservative judges, Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Neil Gorsuch, noted their dissents. Mr. Trump has in recent months ordered National Guard to Portland, LA, DC, and elsewhere. So that was in late December. Let's go ahead and just do a check on CIA Google real quick. Supreme Court. Let's see, National Guard, Chicago, and see if there's been any developments since then. I think this is literally the last thing. Trump ends national deployment. Yeah, and so Trump actually, despite what some of us have been afraid of, Trump actually did follow this ruling, it looks like. Let's go ahead and check this out. From Politico, Trump ends National Guard deployment in 3 cities after Supreme Court. President said troops will no longer be in LA, Chicago, and Portland. So, okay, good. He actually listened to the ruling. That's a positive thing. This was coming at the end of December, right as January's beginning. And he says they could go back, but, we're removing the National Guard despite the fact that crime has been greatly reduced by these great patriots in those cities, and only by that fact. So, he's still patting himself on the back, but at least he listened. And this is shortly after that, behind the front lines of the legal battle against Trump's National Guard deployments. I will put this in the show note if you want to read more about that, because that is kind of an ongoing battle that's taking place in the background, sort of at the same time as everything we're about to get into with ICE, is these National Guard deployments. And people like myself don't think that Trump should be able to federalize or take control of the National Guard and do what he wants with them. I think that goes against states' rights. And I am somebody who supports states' rights and the 10th Amendment. And in fact, one more story before we move on. 10th Amendment lawsuits. And I've been trying to get somebody from the 10th Amendment Center to come on the show and give me some more background on this. But here's sort of the latest things that we have on this. Minnesota and Illinois invoke the 10th Amendment in lawsuit against Trump to try to block federal agents in their cities. Here's why that matters. So that was January 15th. So 10 days ago, those lawsuits were filed. And as of this morning, Minnesota claims the ICE surge is illegal. A judge will hear arguments on Monday. And I believe that Monday is today. Yeah. So a federal judge in Minnesota will consider an extraordinary legal question on Monday. Can a deployment of federal law enforcement officers be so dangerous and so intrusive that it violates the state sovereignty under the 10th Amendment? That's what lawyers from Minnesota and Chicago and elsewhere are arguing. We're going to see. I don't think there's been any update as I am recording this. This is being recorded on Monday afternoon. So maybe by the time you're hearing this Monday night, there might have been an update. I will be following this, but I hope that the states' rights issue argument does work. I know some of you will say federal supremacy and all this bullshit, but the federal government was never meant to be, this massive titan that could override what the states want. The whole idea of the United States is that the states were sovereign and independent and essentially on like countries of their own that have their own rules, have their own regulations, and the federal government sort of oversees them and they all agree to come together. But this is why we need a movement back towards the idea of secession and more people recognizing that states have the right and the power and the authority and I think the duty to secede when the federal government gets out of control like this. So we will keep you guys updated as that develops. I'm going to be reading more about that today. All right. One thing, guys, before we go to our final story of the day, which is going to take up the rest of the show talking about ICE, I want to remind you guys, my website is theconsciousresistance.com, theconsciousresistance.com. I encourage you to visit my website once a week, guys. I know many of you follow me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Telegram, Substack, Instagram, TikTok, and I'm grateful for that. But I really, really want to invite you to visit my website because not only can you not rely on social media to show you everything I do because of algorithms and things like that, but because this is really where you can find the best of all of my work I've done over the last 15 years. We have it broken down by categories, investigations, documentaries, my books, presentations, different topics, Finder's Cult, the occult, the surveillance state, technocracy, UFOs, the Trump deception, vaccines, water fluoridation, weather modification, anarchism, 9/11 truth, 5G, and on and on and on. And all of the reports I've done over the years are in these categories. And if you go to my website, you don't have to rely on Facebook or Twitter or wherever to show you my recent interview I did with Jimmy Dore, or my recent interview I did on Redacted, or with Shannon Joy, or the recent podcast I've been doing about my memoir. I launched a new podcast called A Man of My Word, which is the title of my new memoir, which you can pick up at amanofmyword.com. And we're doing that every Friday. I encourage you to check that out. We've also got a new article about ICE from Don Villa Jr., one of our contributors. I did an unboxing of the Daylight computer. There's a lot of content that if you're simply following me on social media, you're not going to see it. And I just want to invite you guys to do that because that supports me better. Look, I love the social media follows, but I would rather you give the traffic to my website. So again, theconsciousresistance.com. All right, so let's go ahead and continue on with our final story of the night. And I say story, but I really mean stories. This is going to be all about ICE. And since this is my first show of the year, there's quite a few things that I want to get into. We are going to talk about the shooting of Alex Preddy in just a few moments, but there's a couple other stories on the way to there, which I think really set the stage for what we're seeing with ICE and what it means for those of us who value freedom, who value individual liberty, who, as I was speaking a moment ago, want the federal government to be small, limited, or non-existent, in a perfect world. And how under Trump, those who claim to care about individual liberty, who are, people who've been telling us for decades that the federal government was going to label Americans domestic terrorists, and that the federal government was going to come after us and militarize the streets, and there would be a police state. People like Alex Jones are now celebrating it, are now cheering it on. And it is so disturbing and so sad to see. But this isn't just going to be I know some people in the comments, oh, great, Derrick, you're a libtard, you want open borders, this and that. I'm going to share with you guys my opinions on immigration when we get to the end. But first, I want to dissect these stories. Let's just look at the objective facts of what's happening, what has been happening with ICE, and where this is all headed, okay? So let's go ahead and start with this one. This is from a couple weeks ago, let's see, December 31st. So yeah, a couple weeks ago, ICE plans $100 million wartime recruitment push targeting gun shows, military fans for hire. So this one was interesting because a strategy document shared among immigration officials details plans to use influencers and geo-targeted ads to supercharge their push to hire thousands of officers nationwide. And so you've got these different memes and images that ICE has been sharing. Here, I'm going to open up some of them. And it's clearly, in some cases, I mean, I think it's meant to invoke video game culture in a lot of ways. So, for example, let me just open this one up here. Your nation calls once more, defend the homeland. And even that phrase, do you guys remember back when the Department of Homeland Security was first created post 9/11, how many right-wingers and other people said, I can't believe George Bush is calling this the homeland. What is that, similar to like the fatherland? People were questioning it. And then you got the enemies are at the gates with a bunch of people with knives, with swords, and then destroy the flood. It's kind of like a Halo type look, the flood of what? Immigrants, like people, brown people from other countries. They're trying to invoke this other person, be afraid of them. There's a flood of Marxists. 40 million people have flooded into the country, 30 million, 20 million, all these numbers that are constantly thrown around, which, by the way, when push comes to shove, when I ask people to tell me, where did you get your sources? Nobody ever has a good answer for this. The best numbers that I've seen are about 10 to 12 to 13 million people have come across the border in the last 5 years or so. And, a little bit before that. That's a lot of people. That's millions of people. But it does make a difference. Facts matter. And there's a big difference between 12 million and 20 million, 30 million, 40 million. Part of the difference is that if you're a person out there who has bought into that propaganda and somebody tells you 40 million illegals flooded the country, you're not going to be satisfied until you see 40 million people deported or detained or killed or whatever, even if that number isn't accurate. So the facts do matter. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials are planning to spend $100 million over a one-year period to recruit gun rights supporters and military enthusiasts through online influencers in a geo-targeted advertising campaign, part of what the agency called a wartime recruitment strategy. It said was critical to hiring thousands of new deportation officers nationwide. The spending would help President Donald Trump's mass deportation agenda dominate media networks and recruitment channels, including through ads targeting people going to UFC, listening to patriotic podcasts, people showing an interest in guns and tactical gear, according to a 30-page document distributed among officials this summer detailing ICE's, quote, surge hiring market strategy. DHS has spoken publicly about its fast-tracked effort to significantly increase ICE's workforce by hiring more than 10,000 new employees. A surge promoted on social media with calling for recruits willing to perform their, quote, sacred duty and to defend the homeland by repelling foreign invaders. The agency currently employs more than 20,000 people, according to ICE's website. But the document, which was first reported by the Washington Post, reveals new details about the vast scale of the recruitment effort and its unconventional strategy to flood the market with millions of dollars and spending for Snapchat ads, influencers, and live streamers on Rumble, of course, on Rumble, MAGA Rumble, Peter Thiel funded Rumble, a video platform popular with conservatives. Under the strategy, ICE would also use an ad industry technique known as geofencing to send ads to phone web browsers and social media feeds of anyone who goes near military bases, NASCAR races, college campuses, or gun and trade shows. So clearly they're trying to target a very specific type of person. Somebody from the South goes to NASCAR races, hangs out at military bases, goes to gun and trade shows. Obviously, not all people going to gun shows are right-wingers. I'm not trying to say that, but there is clearly a personality type, a profile that they are trying to target their ads to. The document was distributed among ICE officials in the days after the agency published a request for bids seeking contractors who could use, quote, precise audience targeting, performance media management, and results-driven strategies to accelerate the achievement of its recruiting goals. So the language in this call closely mirrored the language in the strategy document. The same month, DHS awarded 2 marketing firms nearly $40 million to support the ICE Public Affairs Office recruitment campaign. So they're using geofencing. They're going to use influencers, trying to encourage people to go sign up on, join ICE, join the fight against the flood of immigrants, defend the homeland. This is the kind of people that they are recruiting to be on the streets of America, my friends. Now, in the next development, this one that came out about 5 days ago, which I don't know why it's not getting more attention, I just, unfortunately, I've seen excuses being made by people, and it's not getting the attention that it deserves. Immigration officers assert sweeping power to enter homes without a judge's warrant. Hello. Anybody who gives a shit about the Constitution, Fourth Amendment right, conservative principles, limited government. There is a federal agency saying they can enter your home without a warrant. This is the police state you were warned about. This is the police state you've been telling us was coming for so long. According to this memo, which was obtained by the Associated Press, federal immigration officers are asserting sweeping power to forcibly enter people's homes without a judge's warrant, marking a sharp reversal of long-standing guidance meant to respect constitutional limits on government searches. The memo authorizes ICE officers to use force to enter a residence based solely on a more narrow administrative warrant to arrest someone with a final order of removal. A move that advocates say collides with Fourth Amendment protections and upends years of advice given to immigrant communities. So let's read that sentence carefully. This memo from ICE is telling ICE officers that they can enter somebody's home only using an administrative warrant, which does include a final order of removal, saying, hey, this immigrant is illegal. We give the final order to deport them. But it's not a typical warrant that most people would think is needed to get into your home. It is what is known as an administrative warrant. So let's get deeper into this. For years, immigrant advocates, legal aid groups, and local governments have urged people not to open their doors to immigration agents unless they are shown a warrant signed by a judge. This guidance is rooted in Supreme Court rulings that generally prohibit law enforcement from entering a home without judicial approval. So again, you want a warrant, go see a judge, get a warrant from the judge, not some administrative warrant. The ICE directive, though, in this new memo, it directly undercuts that advice at a time when arrests are accelerating under Trump's administration immigration crackdown. The memo itself has not been widely shared within the agency, according to a whistleblower complaint. So this is the thing. This is all based on a whistleblower complaint. This is not just the Associated Press making shit up. For those of you who say, oh, AP is not a good source, which I've already heard more than enough on Twitter. According to the whistleblower complaint, this is, we don't know if this memo has been shared widely, but its contents have been used to train new ICE officers who are being deployed to the cities and towns as part of Trump's crackdown. The new ICE hires and those still in training are being told to follow the memo's guidance instead of written training materials that actually contradict the memo, according to the whistleblower disclosure. And we'll show you the memo for that whistleblower disclosure in just a second here. It is unclear how broadly the directive has been applied in immigration operations. The Associated Press witnessed ICE officers ramming through the front door of a Liberian man, Garrison Gibson, with a deportation order from 2023 in Minneapolis on January 11th, wearing heavy tactical gear with their rifles drawn. Documents reviewed by the AP reveal that the agents only had an administrative warrant, meaning that there was no judge who authorized the raid on private property. This change is almost certain to meet legal challenges and stiff criticism from advocacy groups and immigrant-friendly state and local governments that have spent years successfully urging people not to open their doors unless ICE shows them a warrant signed by a judge. The Associated Press obtained the memo and the whistleblower complaint from someone in Congress who shared it on the condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive documents. The AP then verified the accounts in the complaint. So the memo, which was signed by acting ICE Director Todd Lyons on May 12, 2025, says, quote, although the DHS has not historically relied on administrative warrants alone to arrest aliens subject to final orders of removal, the DHS Office of General Counsel has recently determined that the U.S. Constitution, the Immigration and Nationality Act, and the immigration regulations do not prohibit relying on administrative warrants for this purpose. So they're basically saying, even though we haven't done this in the past, according to our legal interpretation, the Constitution doesn't stop us from using an administrative warrant. They're going to argue in court, I'm sure, once this gets tested in court, which it will eventually, that, well, the Constitution never specifically says it has to be signed by a judge. So, yeah, but this is where it's at, guys. ICE agents are being taught that they don't need a real actual warrant from a judge. An administrative warrant is just fine, and they can enter your home. And you better believe we're going to end up in a situation where somebody who has a gun sees some masked men coming into their house and they try to shoot and they get killed by ICE, and it turns into another bloodbath like the ones we've been witnessing recently. And it's sad to say, guys, but this, to me, this is a huge story. And I wish more and more people in the independent media, the truth movement, were paying attention to this and not making excuses. Because as I said, all I've heard is freaking excuses over on Twitter and even some places like Facebook and elsewhere. Now, one other one before we get closer to talking about Alex Preddy here. This is coming from NPR. Again, not my favorite source, but you can search around, guys. This is being reported many places. Native Americans say they're being swept up by ICE. This was reported on January 15th. This week, the Oglala Sioux tribe said tribal members were detained by ICE after raids in Minnesota. And then this is an interview. It says, then President Trump is threatening to send military to Minneapolis. And so this is, it's just them talking about it. Here's another update on this. Oglala Sioux president walks back claims of DHS pressure, member arrests. Now, so this is an interesting development. This was reported shortly after that. The president of the Oglala Sioux tribe has walked back claims he made in a memo and press release earlier this week that immigration enforcement arrested 4 tribal members and that the federal government tried to extract an immigration agreement out of the tribe in return for information about their members' whereabouts. The DHS said it can't verify claims that any of their officers arrested or even encountered members of the tribe or found anyone in their detention centers claiming to be a tribal member. They denied asking for any kind of agreement. Tribal President Frank Starr comes out, has not responded to repeated requests for comment, including after his updated memo was released on Thursday. The accusations of arrest came at a time when many Native Americans are already concerned over Trump's immigration agenda, and some tribes have grappled with whether to engage in agreements with DHS tied to the crackdown. Starr comes out, said Tuesday in a message on Facebook that the men were arrested in Minneapolis and that ICE had launched it, where ICE has launched its biggest operation ever. And he says that when the tribe reached out about the arrest, federal officials told us that the tribe could access that information if we entered into an immigration agreement with ICE and Department of Homeland Security. Then he later said, okay, that his statement had been misinterpreted, that they didn't try to make a deal with him. Nevertheless, there is absolutely ICE arrest, as it reports here, that there have been ICE arrests and people speaking out saying that Native people have been arrested. And this is talking about Arizona, New Mexico. The first story is about Minnesota, but there's others. In November, we got a member of the Confederate Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation in Oregon, and an actress known for her roles in Northern Exposure in The Last of Us said she was stopped by ICE officers in Washington State and told that her tribal ID looked fake. So this is happening. There's definitely Native Americans, the people who've been colonized and been in this country forever, are being profiled. They're being, targeted just like everybody else. And because that's the problem with this whole thing is we're back to post 9/11, racial profiling people by their skin, all these things. This is what's happening. And unfortunately, it's being allowed. And how is it being allowed? That's what our next article here focuses on. This is from The Atlantic from late December. Why the Supreme Court is giving ICE so much power. I'm going to put these, all the articles are going to be in the show notes, but I encourage you to go read them yourself. Do the due diligence. Don't just listen to people like me and then think you've got it all figured out. Don't just listen to MAGA media and think you got it all figured out. Don't just listen to people who are, completely anti-ICE and make your opinions. Read the material, read the historical precedents, read the case law, then form your opinion. Why the Supreme Court is giving ICE so much power. The Constitution inarguably applies to federal immigration agents, but the Supreme Court has taken away the hope of ever holding them to that standard. And so it just does a little brief recap. As we know, ICE has detained suspected illegal immigrants without cause, including U.S. citizens and lawful residents. They have, in effect, kidnapped people breaking into cars. They've used tear gas and pepper spray on nonviolent and violent protesters. Yes, we know some protesters are violent, but they're not all. They have used tear gas. They have refused to identify themselves, wearing masks, using unmarked cars, switching license plates. They have kept people in detention without access to lawyers. They have questioned people simply for appearing Latino, speaking Spanish, or being in areas frequently believed to be frequented by illegal immigrants. Many of these tactics are plainly illegal. The Constitution incontestably applies to federal immigration officers. The Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable searches and seizures and excessive force and requires a warrant to search a private home. The Fifth Amendment guarantees due process and bans self-incrimination. The Sixth Amendment establishes a person's right to counsel. So then why the fuck is ICE getting away with all this? Well, according to this article, you can trace this back to 2 Supreme Court decisions that put too much faith in ICE's commitment to respecting people's constitutional rights. As a result of these cases, people whose rights are violated by ICE have little to no recourse, unfortunately. Contrast that with the rules of police officers. If a police officer kicks down your home, searches your house without a warrant, questions you without a Miranda warning, or illegally arrests you, a provision known as the exclusionary rule may prevent that evidence gathered through those tactics from being used in your prosecution. And if you happen to be acquitted, you can sue for damage. Although I will say the cops also get away with all kinds of shit too, so even that's not guaranteed. But none of this is even applicable when it comes to ICE. The first of these two cases is a 1984 decision called INS versus Lopez Mendoza that untethered ICE from the exclusionary rule. In a 5-4 opinion, Justice Sandra Day O'Connor rejected the exclusionary rule for immigration courts, instead saying that, quote, a deliberately simple deportation hearing system instead of immigration courts. And in a typical criminal case, the exclusionary rule is designed to deter police misconduct. The idea being that the police will avoid such conduct if it risks undermining their conviction. But for ICE, the court decided that such a deterrence is not necessary. Unless ICE conduct amounts to a, quote, egregious violation of the Fourth Amendment, the evidence that the agents gather, even if it's through illegal means, can be used in immigration courts. Part of this court's decision was a presumption that the Fourth Amendment violations by ICE officers were, quote, not widespread. So basically they're saying, why should we even worry about this? ICE officers, they don't violate people's Fourth Amendment. And this was back in 1984. So, 40 years ago. And they're saying that Immigration and Naturalization Service has already taken sensible and reasonable steps to deter Fourth Amendment violations by its officers. So basically, it's just this presumption of innocence on the part of ICE that they're all angels and they're not going to violate people's Fourth Amendment. So why do we need to have that protection in there? So that Supreme Court case is INS versus Lopez Mendoza, 1984. The second court decision they point to appears to have eliminated or at least seriously limited the possibility of lawsuits for damages after individuals are unlawfully detained, searched, or experience excessive force at the hands of ICE. This was not that far ago. This is 2022. Egbert versus Boole. Justice Clarence Thomas, writing for the majority, denied the rights of plaintiffs to sue Border Patrol agents for excessive use of force in the name of national security. Oh, that same old thing they love to pull out. There is every reason to believe that the Supreme Court would extend the rationale in Boole to shield ICE from liability as well. The court would effectively be greenlighting ICE's abusive tactics and insulating agents from damages when they are, in fact, no different from any state or city police officer who violates a person's constitutional right. And the rationale in this case relies on the agency's purported ability to self-regulate. Justice Thomas suggested, quote, Border Patrol must investigate alleged violations and accept grievances. But can anyone actually count on or believe that ICE is going to take care of themselves? I mean, I don't think that's something we can actually believe is going to happen, or I think we're already seeing that these people are unaccountable and they're not going to police themselves. So why should we think that, with or without these court decisions, that they're going to do that? But just in case you want a little bit of background, these are the court's decisions that, let's say you get manhandled, abused, beat by ICE, and you try to take it to court, they're more than likely going to argue that these cases protect them and that they have immunity. And guess what? People like the psycho Stephen Miller and Trump's administration, they're arguing the same thing. They're telling the officers, you have federal immunity. We've got your back no matter what you do. All right, so let's go on to this big story of the week, the shooting, the death, I'll call it a murder of Alex Preddy. We're not going to go ahead and play all the different clips and try to dissect the angles, because I think that if you're not just following this freaking woman, Kristi Noem, or Stephen Miller, or Donald Trump, you've seen the videos. And there's now multiple angles that show that Alex Preddy was shot in the back. Now, we can debate why he was there. All the videos show that he had a phone in his hand. He apparently had a gun with him, concealed carry. And there's a scene that shows a woman being pepper sprayed. He appears to try to help her, and then he gets grabbed by the ICE agents. He seems to kind of pull on the woman, maybe just because he's starting to grab for something to hold. Then, while there's this scuffle going on, 4 or 5 ICE agents throw him to the ground. One of them clearly disarms him. If you haven't seen this video, guys, I'm not making it up. Like I said, we're not going to get lost in trying to dissect frame by frame. There's plenty of other places doing that. But there's clear video of them taking the gun off his hip and walking away with it. And then this pussy ICE agent shoots him in the back and repeatedly shoots over and over and over, and he dies right there. Now, just like with Renee Good in that shooting a few weeks ago, Kristi Noem and Trump and his people immediately go to calling him a terrorist and making up shit. So let's go ahead and look up some of the shit that has been made up here. This is from CNN, of course. So again, be critical if you want, but these are their direct quotes. We can find their own words, and I'm going to play you some words from Kash Patel in just a moment. So again, these are their own words. You don't have to take CNN for their own word. This is what they've said. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem claimed that Preddy attacked officers, an assertion which was later echoed by FBI Director Kash Patel, but no footage as of Sunday afternoon or today, Monday afternoon, shows him committing any kind of attack. Kristi Noem claimed that he was brandishing a gun, but no available footage shows him even holding his weapon at the scene. A concealed gun appeared to be taken from his waistband area before he was shot. So again, he was disarmed and then shot. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller referred to Preddy as an assassin who tried to, quote, murder federal agents. Vice President J.D. Vance reposted this claim. Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino, who I think is just one of the worst human beings alive, and the Department of Homeland Security in a social media post said, quote, it looks like Preddy, quote, wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. How you can even think that? The dude didn't pull his gun out, didn't start shooting at people. They're just making shit up. Nobody has shown any evidence that Preddy sought to kill anyone, let alone perpetrate a massacre. Kash Patel suggested that Preddy broke the law by carrying a concealed gun at a protest, but the Minneapolis police chief said Preddy had a permit to carry the gun and was allowed to have it on him as he was protesting in a public space. His parents, Alex Preddy, they issued a statement on Saturday saying the sickening lies told about our son by the administration are reprehensible and disgusting. And in television interviews on Sunday, the administration declined to repeat some of their most incendiary allegations from Saturday about Preddy, who was a registered nurse in an ICU unit at Veterans Affairs facility. So this guy worked with veterans. This guy probably considered himself to be patriotic, and he ends up being murdered by ICE thugs. The administration claimed that Preddy attacked officers. Videos don't show him attacking anybody. Videos contradict Noem's Saturday suggestion that he was brandishing a gun. Other officials wouldn't repeat the claim on Sunday. The administration has provided no evidence for its claim that Preddy was an assassin or planned to massacre officers. There's this fucking scum, Greg Bovino, this guy right here in the middle, this stupid-ass military haircut. He likes to walk around like with a freaking Nazi look-alike long jacket. I just can't stand that guy. I'm trying to pray, guys, and ask for help because these people, my blood boils when I see these people. Minnesota guns group owners say Patel was completely incorrect on Minnesota law about carrying a gun at a protest. O'Hara, the Minneapolis police chief, said on Sunday that Preddy had a permit to carry a concealed firearm and was legally armed at the scene of his killing on Saturday. But Patel claimed Sunday on Fox News when discussing the incident, quote, you cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that simple. And we're going to show that clip in a second. No one who wants to be peaceful shows up at a protest with a firearm that is loaded with 2 full magazines. Despite the fact that during COVID 1984, MAGA and right-wing protesters went to different capitals like the Michigan Capitol, fully armed with guns. I went to the huge gun rights protest in Richmond, Virginia in early 2020, where there was thousands of people armed to the teeth with guns. Plenty of right-wingers go to protest with guns. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think they have the Second Amendment right. I also believe in open carry. So this is just a complete psyop trying to get the right wing to now abandon gun rights because somebody they don't like who's opposing ICE had a gun. The Minnesota Gun Owner Caucus, a gun rights organization in the state, responded to Patel saying, this is completely incorrect on Minnesota law. There is no prohibition on a permit holder carrying a firearm loaded with multiple magazines at a protest or a rally. And the national organization Gun Owners of America posted on X on Saturday, the Second Amendment protects Americans' rights to bear arms while protesting, a right the federal government must not infringe upon. I mean, it is just so sickening to watch these liars say this crap. You know, it's just so full of shit. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and maybe retweet this in a moment. I want to read the whole thing before I share it out there. But you can see that there are gun groups who are actually calling this bullshit out. We're going to talk more about Kash Patel in just a moment. Let's go ahead and go on. Now, I wanted to share a little bit of my personal experience about why this has kind of been affecting me, or at least, how it relates to my personal experience. And so I'll just read this post I made on Facebook and other social media. I've been thinking a lot about why the shooting of Alex Preddy bothers me so much. Obviously, the loss of human life at the hands of the state is always an injustice, but it is also deeply personal for me. Here's why. And some of you might remember this. In 2016, as I was just starting to put together my thoughts around, I'm going to sort of read it and then also just communicate it in my own words. You guys know that in 2016, I was developing freedom cells. It's been 10 years of freedom cells. And one of the first things that I was talking about was, how do we organize against violent cops? And so I had videos literally called How to Organize Against Violent Cops. I gave speeches and talks about how we need to come together, and in a decentralized way, we need to disarm cops, or to at least help people who are being abused by them. Now, I know that this is very controversial, but it's something that I believed then and I believe now. And this is because there was, Eric Garner and other killings by the police at that time. And I found myself asking, what would I do if I saw a cop killing somebody in front of me? Would I stand by silently? Would I film? Would I intervene? And unfortunately, shortly after this, I had my chance to find out, guys. I actually, November 15th, 2016, I'm going to go ahead and pull this up. I was at a protest in Houston where there was, peaceful protest. People were protesting in support of the Standing Rock Sioux and against the Dakota Access Pipeline. I was there documenting for about 2 hours, and it's just prayers, it's marches, it's songs. And then the next thing you know, some Houston Police Department officers got some dude on the ground, choking him, beating him. It was starting to get violent, right? And first he's on the ground, and people are like, hey, look there. And I witnessed the whole thing. And I'm going to go ahead and put some of the video here on screen now for you guys. I witnessed this whole thing, and it was, this is after I'm literally asking myself, what would I do if I witnessed somebody being beaten up by the cops or abused by the cops? And then days later, I witnessed this scene. So I'm going to go ahead and just show this, and I'll narrate it. So you can see right there on screen, there's some guy being smashed up against the wall. The cops are starting to, push him around, and I'm on the other side of the street. He's yelling, help, help, help. And they're trying to just, be rough with him. Now, what started this incident, I would later learn, is this guy was walking by, and there I go running into the scene. And here you can go. Here's split screen with my camera. You can see on the right side, I'm right in the cop's face, and you're not hearing the audio, but I'm screaming, fuck you, let him go, let him go. And there's some guy yuppie downtown trying to cool me down or chill me out. I'm telling them, let him go, chill the fuck out. We will disarm you. I definitely lost my cool. I'm willing to admit that. I was calling them pussies. I was saying all kinds of things I don't normally say. And this is 10 years ago. So this is 31-year-old Derrick. And I was definitely, I think, probably a little more radical and angry. But like I said, and here's the moment where you can see if you look on the right-hand side of your screen, I'm smushed up against the wall. Now I'm behind the guy as the cops are trying to manhandle him. I got kind of caught up in the middle of it. And I'm yelling at them, and I'm telling them, like, let him go. This cop's trying to grab me. I'm just trying to get away from him. I'm getting right in the face. And right at this moment, if you look on the right side of the screen, you can see it's sort of hard to see it, but I put my knee into the cop's back for like half a second. And then I thought better of it, and I pulled back. And anyways, then the horse cops start to show up. The scene just gets wildly out of control. And I'm terrified, and I think a lot of people are terrified that this guy might be, killed right there in front of all of us. So here I am. I'm trying to get around the cops. I'm dodging these horses' asses and trying to film underneath them. And just the cops are trying to get in my face, as you can see here, trying to step on me. And I'm just doing what I can to get as close to the scene as possible. Here they go. They want to block me. And so the short version of the story is that basically, as I did this, eventually the cops say, get him, get him. They start trying to run over me. They start focusing on me as I'm filming. And once they start focusing on me, I literally hopped on my bike and I just rode out of town with literally cops on horses chasing me. And here I am. You can see I'm getting closer and closer. They kept trying to run me over with these horses. Thankfully, I didn't get trampled on because I was pretty close. And this was a heated moment. I left downtown. Here you can see, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. You can see they got this guy down. They're arresting a different guy. They got another guy. They got the first guy. And I'm sitting and see right there, that's when the cops pointing at him, get him, get him, get him. And I hightailed it out of town, and a couple days later, I learned that I had a warrant out for my arrest. And basically, for the next year, all the way from November to August 2016, HPD claimed that I had assaulted this officer. I had to go to court and fight them in this legal battle. They claimed that I scratched the cop's thumb. No shit. Literally, that I scratched his thumb, and they called that a police assault. And I ended up having to go to court, and a jury of my peers found me not guilty. And, the whole thing came to an end. But the point is, when I see what happened to Alex Preddy, I think about these things like, what would I do in that situation? I want you to think about that, because I realize that sometimes just filming isn't enough. And Alex Preddy, he was trying to film as ICE was throwing some other woman to the ground and pepper spraying her. And then he sort of intervened. I don't think he impeded their duties, as people are saying, but he did step in and like, hey, yo, chill out, which I think what any moral good person does. And that's what I was trying to do in that situation. Unfortunately, I think if that happened today from 2016 to 2026, I probably would be shot and killed by those cops, especially if it was ICE. And so when I see these situations unfolding, it really does hit me deeply, because I don't think I can sit still in a moving train or be neutral when there is increasingly tyrannical and violent things taking place. And so I've just been reflecting on it a lot. And maybe you guys totally disagree with that sentiment, but we're going to go through here now. And I want to show you guys a couple of other Facebook posts I've been making as I've been sharing my thoughts, and they've been getting a lot of attention. And we're going to play a clip from Kash Patel in just a second, but let's go ahead and check out this post I made on social media recently. What I said here was, just in case anyone's confused, since I'm critical of ICE and Trump, I'm not a leftist, I'm not a liberal, and I'm not a Democrat. I don't support transgender surgery for kids. I don't support vaccine mandates. I don't support free healthcare. I don't support banning guns. I'm an anti-authoritarian, anti-statist voluntarist. And if you're following me because you think I'm on your side, you're going to be upset sooner or later. And as you see, this has got 2,000 likes and hundreds of comments. And so people are realizing that we don't need to fit into a box. And the reason I felt the need to post this is because since I'm being critical of ICE, I can't tell you guys the amount of times I've been called libtard, dumbass, blah, blah, whatever. I mean, you guys know, you've seen this happening. As I posted here, from 2020 to 2024, my left-leaning friends and followers called me MAGA and right-wing for marching with people protesting COVID-1984. And now since 2025, I've been labeled leftist Democrat for opposing Trump's authoritarianism, and back and forth it goes. And I could even go further and say, back in 2004, when I was against Baby Bush and his wars, people were calling me libtard and leftist, and I didn't really know what these terms meant. I just thought war is bad. Why are we going to freaking Iraq and Afghanistan? I don't support that. And then when I started to really wake up in 2009 during the Obama years, people were calling me right-wing, whatever, Republican, for calling out Obama for his drone bombing, for his surveillance. And then, of course, during the Trump years, the first time, I'm a libtard again. And then during Biden, I'm a right-wing MAGA. I've lost a lot of friends over these years for every time, because they want to try to put me in a box when I feel like all I'm doing is being consistent, standing against authoritarianism, statism, violence from the government. My principles haven't changed. In fact, I've gotten stronger and more firm in them. It's just that lots of you people out there have no principles. So you're wishy-washy every 4 years, back and forth, and you're letting them fuck with your mind because you don't have any principles. That's a big part of what we're facing here, my friends. So I'm going to share some more of my thoughts here about what people like Kash Patel are doing, and others like Kristi Noem with their lies are destroying, or at least attempting to destroy, the Second Amendment. So I'm going to play this quick clip. It's like 3 minutes long. We won't play the whole thing. It's from the local news media, I think in Minneapolis, discussing Kash Patel's comments. And I want you guys to check this out. So we'll be right back.
And now the Trump administration is responding to the second fatal shooting this month of an American citizen in Minneapolis at the hands of a federal agent. ABC Justice and Homeland Security reporter Luke Barr joins me now with the latest. Luke, Kash Patel appeared on Fox News Sunday today saying Americans cannot bring loaded firearms to protests. What else did he have to say?
Yeah, he did, and we do have some sound of that. Let's take a listen to what the director said first here, Ike.
But as Secretary Noem said, no one who wants to be peaceful shows up at a protest with a firearm that is loaded with 2 full magazines. That is not a peaceful protest, and you do not get to touch law enforcement. You do that anywhere, this FBI is going to be leading the charge to arrest those.
Yeah, Ike, and he also said that, quote, you cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest. He said it's that simple. You don't have that right to break the law and incite violence. And he also confirmed in that Fox hit that the Department of Homeland Security is actually leading this investigation with an assist from the FBI. He said that the FBI is in possession of the firearm and they're running tests, but so far it's a DHS
All right, so I don't think we need to see the whole clip, but there you go. Just in case you didn't trust my own words, like there's Kash Patel saying, as we reported on that CNN article a couple moments ago, you don't come to a peaceful protest, with guns unless you have bad intent. Even though that's what lots of right-wing open carriers, libertarians, et cetera, people have done for years, and now all of a sudden they're trying to get you to think that that's illegal, that that's a bad thing, because this is part of a psyop to get the right wing, the people who have traditionally been the ones who support gun rights, to now be against them. And this is what I wrote on Facebook. This is how the Second Amendment crowd gets neutered and goes from supporting open carry to saying people should be shot and killed if they open carry around law enforcement. What's the point of open carry if you can't be armed during potentially dangerous situations? Now, I know people will say he wasn't actually open carrying, he was concealed carrying, and that's true. You have concealed carry, you have the right to have a gun hidden on you, on your pocket, and you have a right to open carry. And I want to point out this one comment. This is from a friend of mine that I know from, back in the day in high school. And he's a good guy. And I basically, I consider him to be kind of just an average American. He's just a working class dude. He's got a business. He's got a family, trying to take care of his life. He's not a hard right activist and not a hard left, not even an activist. He's just an American. He said, seeing someone being publicly executed while exercising their First Amendment rights for their exact intended purposes is really, really scary and disturbing. History seems pretty clear on what happens when a government disarms its citizens. This man was disarmed, then executed right in public view, and it's mind-blowing to see so many people supporting it. MAGA, I believe, is losing the support of just average Americans who don't support this kind of shit. Now, here's another one just to kind of take the big picture for you guys. What people who are cheering on ICE and the immigration police state don't understand is that this was all done by design. This is a classic problem reaction solution operation. The predator class create or allow a problem to fester. This causes a reaction in the public, which leads to the solution that the predator class wants. Since 2016, I've been warning that immigration would be the issue Trump used to usher in the technocratic police state. In order to accomplish this, there had to be years of propaganda about immigrants flooding the country. Some based in truth, also lots based in bullshit. Lots of people claim 20, 30, or 40 million people flooded the country without evidence. I'm sure some of you are saying it in the comments right now. Show me your source. In order, yes, there have been crimes by immigrants and violent gangs coming to the U.S. Those stories got amplified so that the people would welcome and celebrate Trump's rhetoric and ICE's violence. Now, more and more people recognize ICE's policies are not solely about violent criminals. ICE is focusing on regular Americans and violating the Constitution. This is only the beginning, my friends. And one more here, just so you understand where I'm at and what my position is, let me make it clear. I couldn't give a fuck if anybody's only crime is illegally crossing the border in the U.S. If a person crossed the border without permission and has spent years being a good person, maintaining a job, not committing crimes, paying taxes, not that I recommend paying taxes, etc., I don't think they should be targeted. I don't care if the law is the law. Now, if someone crossed the border without permission and has committed actual crimes, actual initiations of aggression or violence, then fuck yeah, get them out of here. I know you don't all agree, but that's my stance. And on top of that, if Trump really cared about the immigration problem, his administration would fix the immigration system rather than flexing authoritarian. If Trump wants to fix it, why did the big, beautiful bill have a cap of 800 immigration judges? This isn't about fixing the immigration system, but expanding the police and surveillance state. That's what it comes down to, my friends. That's what this is really about. And I've been warning you guys since Trump's first administration that he was a psyop, that he is a controlled opposition puppet of the technocratic New World Order. And he's surrounded by them, by the Bilderberg members, World Economic Forum members. He's announcing his freaking Gaza Board of Peace technocratic plan at the World Economic Forum. He's working with Bilderberg members, World Economic Forum, young global leaders, Zionists, technocrats, and they're building this immigration police state. But it's not just about immigration. That's the excuse. And it's not just about illegals or brown people or whatever the fuck you've been propagandized to believe about. It's going to come after you and your family if you support this. So look, you can be somebody that is against illegal immigration and open borders, and you can stand against the police state and the authoritarianism. And I think that is where most average Americans are. They don't necessarily want the borders flooded open. Again, I'm an anarchist, so I don't want government and control of freedom of movement in my perfect world. But I get that's not the reality we're in, and I get that's not what everybody wants. Most people just want common sense border policy. They don't want militarization of the streets. They don't want this flexing of authoritarianism. They actually want the system to work. I think it's broken by design, and that's where we're all headed. But that's the truth, guys. So if you're falling for hard left or hard right or one part of the psyop, you're being played, my friends. You don't have to choose. You don't have to put yourself in a box and be psyoped into this civil war that they would love to happen, because that's definitely what these psychos want. Now, guys, as we wrap up the show, I want to let you guys know, if you want to support me, one of the best ways to do it is to buy shirts from our website. Go to theconsciousresistance.com, check out the shop. We got 8 different shirt designs. We got more coming. And we just added, it's not on the website yet, but if you want one, you can email me and we'll get it set up. We did just add 100% cotton. You can get it's a charcoal gray color, 100% cotton, made in the USA, of any of these shirts. Liberate all life. You are a creator. Exit and build. You are beautiful. You are powerful. You are free. The conscious resistance. No masters, no slaves. Holistic anarchism. Revolution without healing is a recipe for disaster. Any of these shirts you want, you can get it in the colors that you find on here, or you can get it in a gray charcoal, 100% cotton, made in the United States. So let me know. And that's one of the best ways to support my work, besides sharing my content. The final note I want to make, guys, after we've talked about all this crazy shit tonight, is I've got a little bit of positive developments in my own life. This past week on the Conscious Agora land, we started to get our roads paved, both external roads. This is a road outside of our property here in Mexico, which has been extremely rocky and bad and hard to get to. It has just been smoothed out. Now they're going to be adding some gravel soon. There you can see the machines. We actually brought them. That's my love and our pup. We got the machines to come onto our property and to start paving some of our internal roads, as you can see right here. And you don't have a before picture, but I mean, these have been rough, rocky, hard, difficult roads, uneven, and they smoothed it all out now. And it's a huge step for us. And you can see us walking there. Here I am in the back. Let me go ahead and open this picture up a little better. That's me back there carrying a sack of avocados on my back. And big developments. So while the world's getting crazy, I'm working on the Conscious Agora. We're building what we believe is going to help us, take on the crazy insanity of the world. That's where I'm focusing my energy, guys. And as I started this show today saying, the People's Reset is really where my focus is going to be. I decided I wanted to record this week because there's so much happening. But for the rest of the week, you're not going to hear from me, because I will be at the People's Reset starting on Wednesday. Once again, you can tune in for free at thepeoplesreset.org, thepeoplesreset.org, starting Wednesday at 10 a.m., going till 5 p.m. with the break at 12:30. All of it will be streamed on our website or on the official Odyssey channel. It'll be available on the archives, so you can watch it for free. If you're tired of just worrying about the problems and you want some solutions, guys, tune in to the People's Reset at thepeoplesreset.org, guys. And I really, really hope to see you there. I'm excited to be gathering with hundreds and hundreds of people from dozens of countries, focused on solutions, conscious music, workshops, community, good vibes. Man, it's going to be an awesome time, and I wish you guys could be here. If you're coming from my Conscious Resistance audience, come say hi to me. If you're going to be on the stream, say what's up to me. I'd love to see you guys there. And final note, if you want to support us, go to theconsciousresistance.com/invest, sign up on Buy Me a Coffee, Substack, etc., and you can support me on a monthly basis, guys, and that goes a long way to supporting my work. So that'll be it for tonight, guys. Thank you so much for your support. We're going to end with a music video, as we always do. This one is coming from DubFX, who is a friend and an amazing artist who is going to be performing live at the People's Reset on Saturday night as part of one of our headlining concerts. This song is called Dig This. I invite you guys to listen to the words, let them seep into your heart, your mind, and your spirit. Even if it's not your favorite genre, hear the words. This guy is one of the most, I think, evolutionary conscious artists out there today who really lives by the message. And I'm so glad that he's part of the People's Reset movement. So check out this song, guys. Until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free, my friends. Protect yourself and the ones you love. Peace.
Okay, let's go.
How do we look?
You look good.
But dig this.
It's all inside of you. Wow. You know just what to do. Yeah, it's all inside of you. Once again now, Athens. So now I'm floating down this rhythm with you, trying to figure out what my mind could do. I'm in a state where I could just pursue. I love this sacred geometry. My curiosity has got me. So I open up my eyes I'm looking down as I'm floating through the sky. I see the ground and I'm waving it goodbye with a smile on my face. Wait, I'm way too high. How did I get here? Where am I going? I'm getting scared here. Why am I floating? What if I disappear into the unknowing? Maybe this is just my fear keeping me broken. Now I've awoken, I'm open to the spirit. No, I won't inhibit. My mind, I push the limit. I'm totally implicit, finally within it. Now I've got the knowledge, all I need to do is bring it back. Wait, what was I saying? Where was I going? Why was I praying? Am I insane? Maybe, is this another game, or am I crazy? I need to refrain from thinking about maybe. Confidence in my mind is gonna save me. So I'ma sit and meditate in this higher state. Let this medicine regenerate me. It's all inside of you. You know just what to do. It's all inside of you, my love. Right. Yeah. Okay. Because I woke up in a daydream. Nothing really is what it may seem. My mind shooting light like a ray beam. And opening my heart is the main theme. And everyone around me's on the same team. Cause psychedelic therapy's the regime. My heart is a racing like a chase scene. And even though it sounds kinda extreme, well, I can feel the love shining through. I feel it for you, every man, woman, child, every animal and mineral. I feel so connected to you, it's so true. Love is the only way through. Now I see it all before me. I'm a guarantee, I'm a devotee to the we. There's no I in team. I'ma push forward for the dream to let this all be trauma free. It's all inside of you.